They had hunted across 1,000 worlds. Their civilization was old, older than most species could imagine. They had built their entire culture around one simple truth: the strong hunt and the weak are hunted. This was not cruelty to them. It was nature. It was religion. It was everything. For 10,000 years they had traveled between stars, searching for new prey. They species the way other races plants or minerals. Each new world offered new challenges, new trophies, new honors for their hunters. The most skilled among them they were treated like gods. Was not yet a god. He was of modest reputation, tasked with training young hunters in their first blooding ritual. It was simple work, usually. Find a primitive species. Drop the younglings on their world. Let them kill. Let them learn. The scout vessel had found Earth 3 cycles ago. The reports were promising. The dominant species called themselves humans. They were soft-skinned, slow, and weak. They had no claws, no armor, no venom. Their eyes were small and could not see in darkness. Their hearing was dull. Their sense of smell was almost useless. The Classification Council had rated them Tier 2, easy prey, perfect for young hunters. Brought 6 younglings with him. They were eager, hungry for their first kills. He chose a remote region on a large northern landmass. The humans called it Canada. There was a small outpost there, far from their population centers. 7 humans lived inside, studying the local wildlife. 7 humans, 6 young hunters. The math was simple. This would be a clean hunt. They landed at night. They could see perfectly in darkness. Their thermal vision painted the world in shades of heat. They moved through the forest like shadows, their clawed feet silent on the frozen ground. The first human they found was outside the outpost, collecting samples from the snow. She was small, wrapped in layers of artificial skin. The youngest hunter approached from behind. His blade was ready. The human turned, she saw him, and then she screamed. Had heard prey scream before. All prey screamed. But this scream was different. It was not just fear. It was a signal, a warning. The outpost door burst open. Another human appeared, holding something in his hands. There was a flash of light, a sound like thunder, and fell. His chest was torn open. He was dead before he hit the ground. Stared, he did not understand. Humans had no natural weapons. The classification said nothing about this. The other hunters charged. They were fast, faster than any human could run. But the human with the thunder weapon kept firing. Another youngling fell, then another. Called the retreat. They fled into the forest carrying their wounded, 2 dead, 1 dying. In mere moments, half his pack was gone. He regrouped them in a cave a kilometer away. The surviving younglings were shaking. They had never seen prey fight back like this. Tried to calm them. He told them the humans had been lucky. He told them they would adapt. They would hunt smarter. But something had changed. He could feel it in his bones. These humans were not what the reports said. The next day they watched the outpost from a distance. The humans were not hiding. They were moving with purpose. They were talking to each other, pointing at tracks in the snow. One of them, a large male with gray in his fur, seemed to be giving orders. Learned later that this human was named Cole. He had once been a soldier. He had spent years hunting other humans in something called a war. He knew how to track. He knew how to kill. He knew how to survive. That night they attacked again. They came from 3 directions, silent and fast. They reached the outpost walls without being seen. The first hunter through the door fell into a pit. The humans had dug a hole in the floor and covered it with thin wood. At the bottom were sharpened sticks, coated in something that burned. The youngling screamed as his flesh melted. The second hunter was hit by a falling cage of metal. It crushed his legs. Before he could free himself, a human appeared above him with a long blade and opened his throat. Fought his way inside. He killed 2 humans himself, tearing through their soft bodies with his claws. But then he found Cole. The human was bleeding from a wound in his side. He should have been dying. Any sane prey would have been dying. But he stood in the hallway with a blade in each hand, and his eyes were not afraid. They fought, was stronger, faster, better armed. He cut the human again and again, but Cole would not fall. Every time thought he had won, the human came at him again, bleeding, broken, but still fighting. There was a word for this. Searched his memory but could not find it. They had no word for a prey animal that refused to accept death. In the end, he was the last of his pack, 5 younglings dead, 2 humans dead, and Cole still standing in that hallway, watching him flee with those terrible, knowing eyes. Reached his ship. He sent his report to he told them everything. The weapons that humans carried, the traps they built, the way they communicated without words, the way they refused to die. The council read his report and called him a failure. They said he had been careless. They said any competent could have succeeded where he had failed. Did not argue. He knew what he had seen. He knew what he had felt in that hallway, facing a creature that should have been easy prey. The humans were something different, something they had never encountered before. And someday, his people would learn that truth the hard way. Part 2: Escalation. 20 years passed. They did not forget their failure on Earth, but they tried to ignore it. Report was buried in archives. The official position was that he had been incompetent. Humans remained classified as Tier 2 prey. But whispers spread. Young hunters told stories around fires about the world where prey fought back. Some called it a warning. Others called it a challenge. The Crimson Thorn heard these stories. They were an elite faction of hunters, veterans who had killed on 100 worlds. They did not believe a soft species could have defeated 6 younglings and they believed it was a lie or a mistake or both. Their leader, Vex, petitioned the High Council. He wanted permission to conduct a proper hunt, not a training exercise, a true hunt with veteran killers and advanced technology. He wanted to prove that humans were nothing special. The council agreed. They gave him 12 of the finest hunters in the Empire. They gave him cloaking technology that could hide them from any sensor. They gave him neural disruptors that could paralyze prey at a distance. Vex chose his target carefully, a small town in a region called Montana, population 847, remote, isolated, far from human military forces. His plan was simple: surround the town, cut communications, hunt the population systematically over 7 days, leave no survivors, bring back 800 trophies. They landed on a moonless night. The cloaking technology worked perfectly. No human saw them arrive. No human heard them move into position around the town. Vex gave the signal. His hunters cut the communication lines. They destroyed the power station. The town went dark. And then they waited. They expected panic. They expected chaos. They expected easy kills. What they got was silence. The humans did not panic. They did not run screaming into the streets. Instead, lights appeared in windows, candles, lanterns. The humans were organizing. They were preparing. Vex did not understand. These were not soldiers. These were ordinary humans, farmers, shopkeepers, teachers, children. How did they know what to do? The answer, he would learn too late, was that humans had been preparing for 20 years. The story of Cole had spread. Governments had taken it seriously, even if they had publicly. Towns near military installations had been quietly trained. Emergency protocols had been developed. Montana was not random, it was a trap. The first hunter died 3 hours into the operation. He was moving through a backyard when something thin and sharp cut through his throat. A wire stretched between 2 posts. The humans called it a tripwire. The second hunter died trying to enter a house. The door was rigged with an explosive device. It blew him apart. The third hunter was shot from a window, not with the thunder weapons had described, with something bigger, something that punched through armor like it was paper. Vex called his hunters together. They regrouped in the forest outside town. He was furious. 3 dead in 3 hours. This was not hunting. This was war. But the humans were not finished. They came out of the town in small groups. They moved through the forest like ghosts. These were not soldiers either. They were hunters. Humans who had spent their lives tracking animals through these mountains. They knew every tree, every rock, every shadow. They had never been hunted before. They did not know how to be prey. A fourth hunter died when a human dropped from a tree onto his back. The human was old, at least 60 cycles. He should have been weak, but he drove a knife into the hunter's neck with the strength of desperation. A fifth hunter was lured into a clearing and shot from 4 directions at once. A sixth hunter was captured. The humans did not kill him immediately. They asked him questions. When he refused to answer, they used his own neural disruptor on him. Then they asked again. Vex tried to adapt. He ordered his remaining hunters to stay together. He used his cloaking technology to hide them. But somehow, the humans kept finding them. He learned later that a human teenager, a girl who was good with machines, had figured out how to detect their cloaking. Something about thermal differences. She had rigged together a detector from old radio parts and a broken television. A human child had beaten technology. On the 4th day, the human military arrived. They came in aircraft and ground vehicles. They brought weapons that Vex could not even recognize. But by then, 8 of his 12 hunters were already dead. The remaining 4 tried to reach their ship. They ran through the forest, abandoning stealth, abandoning honor. They just wanted to escape. The humans and their military worked together. It was seamless. The civilians flushed the hunters toward the soldiers. The soldiers cut off their escape routes. It was a coordinated hunt, executed with precision that they had only seen from their own kind. The ship was destroyed before they could reach it. Human missiles, guided by human technology, tore it apart. Vex was the last to fall. He fought until his weapons were empty. He fought with his claws. He fought until a human soldier put a bullet through his skull. But before he died, he managed to send one final transmission to the. His words were recorded. They became legend among the. He said, "They are not prey, they are something else." The captured hunter lived long enough to say more. He described what he had seen. The traps, the coordination, the refusal to surrender, the way humans turned everything into a weapon. When the council received these reports, they could no longer dismiss them. 2 hunts had failed. 18 hunters were dead. Something was very wrong with the classification of this species. But changing a classification required proof. It required study. It required time. Time that some in the Empire were not willing to give. Part 3. Reclassification. 5 years after Montana, the High Council gathered in the Great Hall of there. The chamber was ancient, carved from stone that had witnessed 10,000 years of decisions. Today, they would decide what to do about humanity. The factions had formed quickly. One group, led by war chiefs who had never faced humans, demanded a full invasion. They wanted to burn Earth and scatter its ashes across the void. They said that anything less was weakness. Another group, smaller and quieter, urged caution. They had studied the reports. They had seen the recordings. They were afraid. An elderly named stood before the council. She was a historian, a keeper of records. She had once been a long ago, before age had slowed her. Now she spent her days studying the species they had encountered. She had spent 5 years studying humans. She had learned their languages. She had read their histories. She had watched their wars. "I have seen what humans are," she said. "I need to show you." She activated a display. Images appeared, recordings from human history captured by probes over the decades. The council watched humans killing each other. They saw something called World War I. Millions of humans throwing themselves into mud and fire, dying for patches of ground. They saw the siege of Stalingrad, where humans starved and froze but refused to surrender. They saw atomic weapons erasing entire cities in single flashes of light. "These are not recordings of humans fighting other species," said. "These are recordings of humans fighting each other." The council was silent. "We classified humans as Tier 2 prey because they have no natural weapons," she continued. "But we missed something important. They have no natural weapons because they never needed them. They make weapons. They make weapons designed to kill each other. For 10,000 years, they have been perfecting the art of killing their own kind." She showed them more images: human soldiers training, human scientists building bombs, human children playing games of war. "Every adaptation we pride ourselves on, humans have mastered," said. "Pack tactics, persistence hunting, tool use, psychological warfare. They developed all of these long before we found them. The only reason humans seem harmless is that they have been trying to stop being dangerous for the last few generations. They have been domesticating themselves." A war chief interrupted. "Then we strike now while they are soft, before they remember how to be hard." Shook her head. "You do not understand. They are not soft. They are restrained. There is a difference, and if you give them a reason to stop restraining themselves." She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. But the war chiefs did not listen. They had never lost a hunt. They could not believe that soft, slow humans could threaten the empire. 3 days later, a radical faction launched an unauthorized strike. They did not wait for council approval. They gathered a fleet of warships and a ground force of 1,000 hunters. They chose a target, a human city called Sydney. They thought overwhelming force would succeed where surgical strikes had failed. They were wrong. The humans had been waiting. In the 5 years since Montana, they had reverse-engineered the technology from captured equipment. They had built new weapons. They had trained new soldiers. And they had done something the never expected. They had unified. Humans spent most of their history fighting each other. Nations against nations. Religions against religions. Ideologies against ideologies. But when they arrived, all of that stopped. Every human government, every military, every scientist and soldier and ordinary citizen, they all came together. They had one enemy now, one target, one purpose. The Sydney incursion lasted 11 days. It was not a battle, it was a slaughter. The ships were destroyed before they could land. Human missiles, guided by human satellites, tore them from the sky. The hunters who made it to the ground found a city transformed into a fortress. Every street was a kill zone. Every building was a trap. The humans did not just defend. They attacked. They pursued through the streets, through the sewers, through the parks and beaches. They hunted them down one by one. Human casualties were significant. Thousands died defending their city. But humans did not count casualties the way they did. They did not see death as failure. They saw it as sacrifice. They saw it as a reason to keep fighting. On the 11th day, the last hunter died. He was cornered in a basement by a group of human teenagers with improvised weapons. They showed him no mercy. Not a single hunter survived. 1,000 of the Empire's finest, destroyed by a species that had been classified as easy prey, stood before the council once more. This time they listened. "I propose a new classification for humanity," she said, "one that has only been used twice in our history." The council knew what she meant. There was a category above all others, a category reserved for species that were not just dangerous, but fundamentally wrong to hunt. Untouchable. "Not because they are more powerful than us," explained. "There are species more powerful, not because they are more numerous. There are species more numerous. Humans are untouchable because hunting them is not worth the cost." She paused. The council waited. "They will never stop," she said. "They will never forget. If we hunt them, they will pursue us across generations. They will learn from every encounter. They will adapt. They will improve. Every attack we make will only make them stronger, smarter, more dangerous." She showed them one final image. It was Cole, the human from the first hunt. He was old now, gray and lined, but he was standing in front of a classroom, teaching young humans how to fight. "They are already teaching their children about us," said. "Not to fear us, to hunt us, to kill us. If we continue this war, we will create an enemy that will chase us to the ends of the galaxy." The council voted. The decision was not unanimous. Some war chiefs refused to accept it, but the majority understood. Humanity was classified as untouchable. The decree was transmitted across the empire. Human space was marked on every navigation chart with a warning symbol, a phrase in the old language, used only twice before in history. It translated roughly to, "Do not wake the sleepers." The first species to earn that warning had hunted themselves into near extinction ago. The second had been a machine intelligence that had scoured 3 systems clean of all life before being stopped. Humans were the third. The failed from the first hunt lived long enough to see the classification changed. He was old now, retired from hunting, spending his days in quiet contemplation. When he heard the news, he felt no satisfaction, only a grim understanding. He had tried to warn them. He had tried to tell them what he had seen in Cole's eyes that night in Canada, the refusal to accept death, the willingness to fight against all odds, the terrible, endless persistence of a species that had evolved to hunt itself. They had made a mistake. They had looked at humans and seen weak, slow, defenseless creatures. They had not understood that those soft bodies contained something far more dangerous than claws or armor. They contained will. The will to survive, the will to fight, the will to never ever give up. And that in the end was why humans were untouchable, not because they could not be killed. They could. Many had been, but because killing them only made the survivors stronger, more determined, more dangerous. There were predators, the greatest predators in the galaxy, but they had finally found a species that they could not hunt. Because humans were predators too, they just did not look like it. And that was the most dangerous kind of all. The end.